test for identifying a true prophet of God is set forth very early in the biblical narrative. In the book of Deuteronomy, we read, "But the prophet who speaks a word presumptuously in my name, which I have not commanded him to speak, or which he speaks in the name of other gods, that prophet shall die. You may say in your heart, how will we know the word which the Lord has not spoken? When a prophet speaks in the name of the Lord, if the thing does not come about or come true, that is the thing which the Lord has not spoken. The prophet has spoken it presumptuously. You shall not be afraid of him." That's Deuteronomy 18:20 through 22. Now, according to this passage and others, God's true prophets were 100% accurate in their predictions. There is no room for error. If it could be proven that they prophesied with even the least little bit of error or margin of error, they were branded as a false prophet, and they died. You know, there are literally thousands of biblical prophecies that have been fulfilled down through the annals of human history. Dr. Hugh Ross, 2012, observes, quote, "Unique among all the books ever written, the Bible accurately foretells specific events in detail many years, sometimes centuries, before they actually occur. Approximately 2,500 prophecies appear in the pages of the Bible, about 2,000 of which have already been fulfilled to the letter. No errors." Dr. Ross goes on to note, "Since the probability of any one of these prophecies having been fulfilled by chance averages less than 1 in 10, figured very conservatively, and since the prophecies are for the most part independent of one another, the odds for all these prophecies having been fulfilled by chance without error is less than 1 in 10 to the 2,000th. Well, here are some examples of just a few prophecies and their fulfillment as presented by Dr. Ross, 2012, on his Reason to Believe website. Sometime before 500 BC, the prophet Daniel proclaimed that Israel's long-awaited Messiah would begin his public ministry 483 years after the issuing of a decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem, Daniel 9:25 through 26. He further predicted that the Messiah would be cut off, killed, and that this event would take place prior to the second destruction of Jerusalem. Abundant documentation shows that these prophecies were perfectly fulfilled in the life and crucifixion of Jesus Christ. The decree regarding the restoration of Jerusalem was issued by Persia's king Artaxerxes to the Hebrew priest Ezra in 458 BC. 483 years later, the ministry of Jesus Christ began in Galilee. Jesus' crucifixion occurred only a few years later, and about 4 decades later, in 70 AD, came the destruction of Jerusalem by Titus. Probability of chance fulfillment, 1 in 10 to the 5th power. Number 2. In approximately 700 BC, the prophet Micah named the tiny village of Bethlehem as the birthplace of Israel's Messiah, Micah 5:2. The fulfillment of this prophecy and the birth of Christ is one of the most widely known and widely celebrated facts of history. Probability of chance fulfillment, 1 in 10 to the 5th power. Number 3. In the 5th century BC, a prophet named Zechariah declared that the Messiah would be betrayed for the price of a slave, 30 pieces of silver, according to Jewish law, and also that this money would be used to buy a burial ground for Jerusalem's poor foreigners, Zechariah 11:12 and 13. Bible writers and secular historians both record 30 pieces of silver as the sum paid to Judas Iscariot for betraying Jesus, and they indicate that the money went to purchase a potter's field, used, just as predicted, for the burial of poor aliens, Matthew 27:3 through 10. Probability of chance fulfillment, 1 in 10 to the 11th power. Number 4, some 400 years before crucifixion was invented, both Israel's King David and the prophet Zechariah described the Messiah's death in words that perfectly depict that mode of execution. Further, they said that the body would be pierced and that none of the bones would be broken, contrary to customary procedure in cases of crucifixion, Psalm 22 and Psalm 34:20 and Zechariah 12:10. Again, historians and New Testament writers confirm the fulfillment. Jesus of Nazareth died on a Roman cross, and his extraordinarily quick death eliminated the need for the usual breaking of bones. A spear was thrust into his side to verify that he was, indeed, dead. Probability of chance fulfillment, 1 in 10 to the 13th power. Number 5. The prophet Isaiah foretold that a conqueror named Cyrus would destroy seemingly impregnable Babylon and subdue Egypt along with most of the rest of the known world. This same man, said Isaiah, would decide to let the Jewish exiles in his territory go free without any payment of ransom. Isaiah 44:28, 45:1, and 45:13. Isaiah made this prophecy 150 years before Cyrus was born, 180 years before Cyrus performed any of these feats, and he did eventually perform them all, and 80 years before the Jews were taken into exile. Probability of chance fulfillment, 1 in 10 to the 15th power. 6. Mighty Babylon, 196 miles square, was enclosed not only by a moat, but also by a double wall 330 feet high, each part 90 feet thick. It was said by unanimous popular opinion to be indestructible, yet 2 Bible prophets declared its doom. These prophets further claimed that the ruins would be avoided by travelers, that the city would never again be inhabited, and that its stones would not even be moved or used for building material. Isaiah 13:7 through 22 and Jeremiah 51:26 and 43. Their description is, in fact, the well-documented history of the famous citadel. Probability of chance fulfillment, 1 in 10 to the 9th power. Number 7. The prophet Moses foretold that the ancient Jewish nation would be conquered twice and that the people would be carried off as slaves each time, first by the Babylonians for a period of 70 years, and then by a fourth world kingdom, which we now know as Rome. The second conqueror, Moses said, would take the Jews captive to Egypt in ships, selling them or giving them away as slaves to all parts of the world. Both of these predictions were fulfilled to the letter, the first in 607 BC, the second in 70 AD. God's spokesman said further that the Jews would remain scattered throughout the entire world for many generations, but without becoming assimilated by the peoples of the other nations, and that the Jews would one day return to the land of Palestine to reestablish for a second time their nation. Deuteronomy 29, Isaiah 11 through 13. Probability of chance fulfillment, 1 in 1 to the 20th power. And finally, number 8 in our little list here. Joshua prophesied that Jericho would be rebuilt by one man. He also said that the man's eldest son would die when the reconstruction began, and that his youngest son would die when the work reached completion, Joshua 6:26. About 5 centuries later, this prophecy found its fulfillment in the life and family of a man named Hiel, 1 Kings 16:33 through 34. Probability of chance fulfillment, 1 in 10 to the 7th. For the sake of putting the figure into perspective, this probability can be compared to the statistical chance that the second law of thermodynamics will be reversed in any given situation. For example, that a gasoline engine will refrigerate itself during its combustion cycle, or that heat will flow from a cold body into a hot body. That chance equals 1 in 10 to the 80th. Stating it simply, based on these 8 prophecies alone, the Bible record may be said to be more reliable than the second law of thermodynamics. Each reader should feel free to make his own reasonable estimates of probability for the chance fulfillment of the prophecy cited here. In any case, the probabilities deduced still will be absurdly remote. Dr. Ross also notes that the estimates of probability included herein come from a group of secular, non-religious research scientists. Before we see it as anything else, we must understand that the Bible is first and foremost a book of history. And as far as the evidences indicate, it is a book of very accurate and reliable history. When the prophecies contained within the biblical text are examined in light of the historical records, both biblical and secular, they provide compelling evidence for the existence of the living God who not only brought this world into existence, but who continues to interact with his creation to accomplish his will and his purposes.